program brings together thought leaders, educators, policymakers, parents, and enthusiasts to discuss the most pressing issues and then propose solutions. Each episode of Education Dialogue is designed to foster meaningful dialogue, share diverse perspectives, and inspire action. And today, our aim is to shine a spotlight on innovative practices and uncover challenges and explore solutions that can transform not only education but Nigeria as a whole. On Education Dialogue, we bring to you educators, students, parents, and every individual who are simply passionate about learning. On this program today, we are going to have so many enlightening engagement and discussions. But don't worry, you're going to sit down and enjoy this dialogue. My name is Folami Ajayi. I am the Enigma. And I will not be doing this alone this afternoon. I'll be doing this with one beautiful lady.
Hello Lagos, hello Nigeria. Hi, I'm Temitope Karim, but you can call me TK. In this special meeting edition of Education Dialogue, we dive deep into sustaining educational innovations and creating long-term impact. Our guest today is Mr. Tayo Osiyemi. He's the Managing Director of SKLD Services. He'll be sharing his invaluable insights on the topic education, building an ecosystem of legacy. And we explore how to create a sustainable and impactful education system.
And you may want to ask, why do we need to discuss education? Education is powerful. Education is the only tool that we can use to transform not only Nigeria, but also Africa. So, on Education Dialogue this afternoon, I'm also proud to tell you that the founder and publisher of Edugist is in the studio. The one I call the education evangelist, Elvis Boniface. So we'll be discussing briefly with us today, what led to the education dialogue. Education dialogue has once started before, so he's going to be telling us why it started. It started education dialogue.
We needed to rekindle that. We engaged our audience, about 11,000 people, under a survey, and 3 major radio stations came top, and here we are today as one of the top 2 radio stations that our audience, which include parents, lead educators, wanted to listen and hear from. So the Education Dialogue pretty much is where we're going to bring a lot of thought leaders, especially doers. We don't just want to talk about the problem. As we identify them, we're going to profile solution. But today, having relaunched this today, I'm overly excited for our partner that will be doing this with us for the next, as long as we cannot even talk about them, SKLD. It's a company that you will get to hear every single week on this show. They're doing some amazing work. This is the first time you'll be hearing my voice. Why I see the mic to our guest, Mr. Tayo, as we all call him. So the Education Dialogue, we want to bring thought leaders from commissioners, from social entrepreneurs, education entrepreneurs, parents. What is the way forward? What are you doing? But much more important today, while we are discussing education legacy, we're not just discussing it in theory. We are using SKLD as a case study. I have worked in education all my professional life. Never would I have thought that there's a company somewhere 24 years after. Yesterday I went to their event at 4 Point, and I was blown away by what is happening. But don't take my word for it. You will hear directly from the horse's mouth live on the studio. So Fola, this is all that I have to say about Education Dialogue. On Lagos, every week, every Thursday, 3:30. Please stay on the dial and follow us across our social media to know more about education. Over to you. Thank you for having me here.
All right, thank you, Elvis. That is Elvis, the CEO of Edugist. Okay, so before I take on the Managing Director of SKLD, as an Executive Director at SKLD Integrated Services, a sourcing company with a bias for education and office supplies, workwear and humanitarian relief items, Mr. Tayo leveraged PMP and MBA credentials to drive business strategy and provide oversight for key business functions. Over the past 15 years of experience in leading teams to achieve significant value creation in and out of business context, and he is passionate about exploring new entrepreneurial frontiers. His area of strength and expertise include business development, organizational growth and transformation, people management, and project management as well. And he has worked with several businesses and functions in his career path. So today we have the managing director of SKLD Integrated Services with us. Mr. Tayo, it's nice to have you on the show.
Thank you very much, Fola. Quick correction, I'm not the managing director. I am an executive director at SKLD Integrated Services. The managing director and founder is Mrs. Temilola Dupetu. Thanks a lot.
All right, thanks for that. So let's talk SKLD.
Sure.
SKLD has been around for the past 24 years. So how have you been able to impact the educational landscape and remain sustainable?
All right, thanks a lot for having me again, and good afternoon, Lagos. Quite a day to be on air, considering what's happening, but it's very interesting that where we find ourselves as a nation today is not unconnected to the investments we have made in education. And that's where I'd like to start from. So SKLD was founded about 24 years ago, and the origin story basically was to provide solutions for working moms and dads to be able to properly cater to their children with regards to educational supplies. If you know how the typical conversation goes, for a lot of schools, they have this long back-to-school list that will typically contain all kinds of things from textbooks to stationery issues and a lot of other things that are required by children, to be able to carry on with their education. And so the founder, who at the time was an oil and gas worker and was doing very well and having a fledgling career in the oil and gas industry, saw a niche, an opportunity, a gap in terms of how parents, would typically go to multiple locations to find what they needed for their children. And so that's what created the pioneering one-stop school shop model. That's where we started off. And so we pioneered the one-stop school shop model where you find everything you need for back to school under one roof. And so the concept was making sure that as a business, we're able to support the education industry, the education sector, support parents and support schools. And so we've transitioned from being just that retail business to becoming a business that supports schools directly, works with the schools to provide end-to-end education supplies, solution and beyond. And for us, the thinking is knowing the cornerstone of what education means to nation building. Then it's important for us to run our business in such a way that our commitment to that industry adds value, not just at the level of commercials, but adds value indeed in terms of quality and how that entire industry is growing and becoming better.
Okay, thank you so much. And I appreciate the fact that you understand that quality education is very important, and your company is doing everything possible to ensure that that is happening in Nigeria. So how can new educational practices and technologies be effectively integrated and maintained?
New educational practices and technologies. So, Tokwe, thanks for that. There are quite a number of conversations around the education space today. As you know, for the most part, a lot of industries have been disrupted. But if you take a look at the typical structure of education, most of what we're still consuming today as curriculum, syllabus and the like are almost quite the same as it was some 25, 30, 40 years ago. And so when we talk about newness in the education space, it's very critical. We've seen a number of models in other parts of the world. Some leading countries today when it comes to education is the likes of Finland. And you've seen the kind of practices they have adopted in terms of bringing education and technology very close. So the kind of conversations we're having right now with education is ensuring that the digital natives, which are the children that we now have today, have a way of being educated in their natural ecosystem. You know, you have a child today at the age of 2 knows how to scroll, knows how to search things on the phone, knows how to use a tab or a device. How do you make sure that you bring educational content there? So when you ask the question, how can we integrate? It's a responsibility for policymakers. It's a responsibility for stakeholders in the education space, such as school owners. It's a responsibility for parents to ensure that we are bringing education to our children in the way that they live naturally. How I put it is this, you know, if you separate the exercise or the experience of getting educated with how people live naturally, you'll find friction in terms of how they process the content. But if you bring it home, you use all the tools that are available. For instance, you use the technology devices to ensure that content is loaded up there. You use accessibility to internet and ensure that children are able to safely access the internet and get information. You use existing tools such as artificial intelligence. You use virtual reality, augmented reality. You use all these critical concepts that are now mainstreamed, not just as buzzwords, but you make sure that people are embracing them, right, from an educational standpoint, safely, then you are on your way. And I'll give a quick example. Very scarcely do I have a conversation with my daughters, for instance, and not tell them, okay, so this afternoon, for instance, we're talking about something. I mentioned a lighthouse. And she said, what is a lighthouse? And I said, oh, take your iPad and Google it and let's look at what it is. So we checked, we saw what it was, and then I was able to explain to her what it does. So this is how the integration should happen. It should be natural. It should not be seen as something that we need to make a strong case for. And I think a critical part is policymakers need to come to the table and ensure that they're embracing it full on.
All right, policymakers need to come to the table and ensure that they are embracing the forum. We're going to just go on a quick musical break, and when we are back, we'll continue the conversation.
Hello Lagos, join us every Thursday right here on Inspiration 92.3 FM from 3:30 to 4 p.m. for Education Dialogue by Edugist. On Education Dialogue, we bring together policymakers, education leaders, and parents to discuss issues, explore solutions, and drive positive change. With Edugist, education has a voice.
Education Dialogue, sponsored by SKLD. And so today we'll be discussing building an ecosystem of legacy where we explore and create a sustainable and impactful educational system. Remember that nothing drives a nation towards achieving what it wants to achieve without having education. And then you may have education, but how sustainable, how impactful is the education that you say that you have? And discussing this, we have our favorite SKLD director with us. And so before we proceed, I'd like to quickly ask Mr. Tayo, as an individual, looking at the education space in Nigeria and looking at what your company is doing, do you find discouragement looking at how the Nigerian state has embraced tech in the last few years?
Well, I wouldn't say discouragement is the word. I would say it's sort of you're amused. Amused because you are looking at a global plane where nations are trying to compete and position the people, which is, most important asset of any nation, the human capital. Position people, in place to compete, globally. And so you see nations adopting a full-on strategy to get their young people to embrace tech fully. But it does seem like, in Nigeria, we're still a little behind. There's quite a bit of work going on here and there. But I'll say that from a private sector-led approach or platform, we've seen a lot of progress. We've seen significant tech boom, across different segments. You see a lot of startups that have taken over the entire space, and we see massive investments coming in the direction of Nigeria, based on the kind of initiatives and businesses that people are setting up. But from an educational standpoint, I think we still have a lot of work to do. There's still quite a bit of infrastructure gap, even from the private sector. It's because, of course, tech is quite expensive when you talk about the initial acquisition cost.
Yeah.
But on the long run, massive upsides, in terms of efficiency. From a government side, I know that you and I know that we still have a lot of work to do, because some of the most basic infrastructure in some of our schools are still lacking. I mean, I grew up in the north, and I know that there's still quite a lot of schools in different parts of Nigeria, not just in the north, that don't even have basic furniture. So talking about tech, computers, internet, and all that, it's still a long shot. But I mean, I was privileged to be at the Universal Basic Education Commission Digital Resource Center in Abuja 2 weeks ago thereabout, and to be honest, I was quite impressed with some of the initiatives that are being driven. I know government is trying to, for instance, set up at least 60 digital schools across different geopolitical zones, and they have, I think, achieved just about 10 to 12, so far. So I think that there are little steps. So it's not all gloom and doom, but we're such a long way to go, because we're talking about a decent, almost 120 million people at least. If you look at our data, we say we're over 200 million people, and we have over 55-60% below the age of 18. So imagine the staggering number of people we need to invest in. So that's what it is.
Okay, thank you so much. And it's nice hearing the fact that the government is ready to be 60 digital schools. However, we still have a long way to go, because there are students in some areas of Nigeria that cannot even operate a computer system properly. Yes, while you have children 5 years old in let me say island in Lagos, Nigeria, if they catch your phone, hey, you'll be so scared. Like, really, you could even say a 2-year-old child, if they'll just be pressing this button, you'll be like, wow. However, we still have a long way to go just to bridge this gap. I'm still talking to the executive director of SKLD Integrated Services, and I'll direct these questions to him. What strategies can build an education system that leaves a lasting legacy for the future generations?
Strategies that can build an education system. I'd say everything starts with the curriculum design. See, nations that have a specific strategic agenda, you understand? Let's say a nation, for instance, decides that we want to be in the next years a powerhouse in health. You understand? Such a nation will start to groom its population, its young people, and begin to deliberately, at the curriculum level, design for that exact outcome. It wasn't sudden that Ukraine became literally the mecca or the destination for medical science. It wasn't suddenly, it was over years. So development of nations is not by sudden flight. So when you say strategies, I think Nigeria needs to take a look at our, what you call competitive advantage, and design for that competitive advantage to be exploited. I think we're such a dynamic people with a lot of potential, but it will take understanding what the potential that we want to unlock is, and designing curriculum to focus on that. So before we start talking about technology tools, those are just tools. A tool is of no use if you don't know what you're trying to achieve. If I gave you a plier, but what you needed was a spoon to eat, as much as a plier may be more expensive than a spoon, you don't need a plier at that point. Except, of course, you want to use a plier to pick up your chicken. You can find a way to make that happen. But generally speaking, designing the thesis and the theory around what we're trying to achieve as a people is what's going to determine the kind of adoption of tools that we now need to achieve that. If we want to become, let's say, a net positive, population in terms of providing tech talents, we need to start investing deliberately from, I would say, the elementary stage. Sometimes people think that it is when you are old enough to be, let's say, 18 or whatever, that you should have access to certain things. We totally remove ourselves from the competition when we begin to think that there's a certain age where you cannot learn. I recently got a request from a friend who said that they were looking for a project management training, lesson for their young teenager. And I told them that I don't know of any project management training platform that is not for adults. But it interested me to realize that a parent was thinking that, look, this 14-year-old can start to embrace project management as a field of knowledge. So I think we need to have a strategy, then use that strategy to design curriculum, and then the curriculum will determine the tools that we need. Obviously, tech is an enabler, but tech cannot enable what does not exist. So I'd say we need to go back to the drawing board and decide what we want to achieve with our population.
All right, thank you so much for that. Now, away from tech, let's talk about some of the changes that SKLD has driven in the past years. Now, I'd like to tell you first that there are so many blueprints that educators embraces and edtech companies embrace in Nigeria. But we want to look at it from the standpoint of your organization. Now, looking at the success stories, the blueprints, we want to focus on the lessons, the pains. There are so many pains and gains, but what are the lessons that you would say you are proud of in the last couple of years?
So as a key player in the education supplies space, in some sense we're essentially traders. What do? We provide schools with all the resources they need, primarily uniforms and then gadgets, furniture and stationery, right? So these are 4 major categories we provide schools. And so as a trading company, one of the things that we're proud of is that we have consistently innovated to see how we can bring value to our customers. And this is what I mean by it. So in 2016, for instance, when we had that major run on our currency and we had a significant devaluation of the naira, we realized quickly that it was almost impossible to continue the level of imports that we're making on some items that were critically needed but we did not have locally. So we had to figure out how to make sure that we could backward integrate. We set up a production factory and started to manufacture uniforms locally. What are some of the other things that we have done? We have constantly also looked at how to leverage waste. So a lot of schools invest a lot of money in resources and the reuse value is a challenge. So one of the things we've done is that we've talked to schools and said, look, if you're sitting on a lot of inventory, we can find a way to do alterations for you so that you can use some of the inventory you have of uniforms that are no longer sort of fit for the students you have. So there are ways that we'll make sure that value is given to our stakeholders. We also have partnerships with, let's say financial partners, for instance, who can bring products to these schools and manage their cash flow. So those are some of the things that we have leveraged.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Tayo and Elvis, for joining us on the maiden edition of Education Dialogue. We hope that today's discussion has provided the necessary insight, not only to inspire what you think about education, but to tell you that we are here to drive not only innovations, but solutions within the education system.
Okay, remember to join. Remember that the conversation doesn't end here. Stay connected with us on our social media platforms, and we are Edugist on all platforms. You can also use the hashtag Edugist on air or hashtag Education Dialogue, and visit our website at www.edugist.org for recorded version of the episodes of this radio show. Read on our website our articles, updates, and everything about education.
Okay, so we also encourage you to share your thoughts and feedback with us. Your voice is an essential part of our community. And if you want to get in touch, please email us at info@edugist.org, info@edugist.org. You can send us a message on voice notes on WhatsApp on our number 0810998694. So until next time that will come your way, keep learning, stay curious, continue to champion the cause of education, and this is Edugist. My name is Folaranmi Ajayi. It will come your way next week. Don't forget, with Edugist, education has a voice.